Like many other kids who grew up in the 90s, I too have crossed paths with the saga of Gran Turismo, specifically Gran Turismo 2. It was a fun game, sure, but didn't leave anything particular within me, besides a lifetime addiction to jazz. I was like, what, 4? But I remember what it was like to start it up and look for the first starter car, roaming the main menu, dealership after dealership, gazing at low-poly supercars that looked exactly like the ones in the magazine and the movies. Unfortunately, back in the day you couldn't start a racing game with a Corvette and a pat on the back. Nah, you had to start at the bottom like everyone else in the used car market. And there it was, Daihatsu Move Blue on Silver. A remarkable car, shared most of its DNA with a fridge, and ended like one on the track. But to me it was special because it was my mom's cars at the time. Not the souped up version, no, just the boring one. For how uninteresting it was on the track, the Move shined like a beacon in its true environment, unreasonably tight European city roads. 10.4 feet long, 4.2 feet wide, and 5.5 feet tall. The car had a very small footprint, yet inside it was as spacious as a Maybach. Now seriously, if you've ever been inside one, you know what I mean. It was also very, very reliable, and cheap to buy and maintain. So now, if you go anywhere in Europe, all you see are dinky little cars like the Move, or the Suzuki Wagon-R, or the Honda N-Box. And you'll be dead wrong. Now, all these cars either never left the land of the rising sun, or belong in a museum now. Or maybe some absolute mad lad is putting an LS engine in a Suzuki Cappuccino as we speak, who knows. But why? These cars were smartly designed, efficient, reliable, perfect for the European urban landscape. So where are they? This is what I want to find out. Did Japan cooked and we were too picky? Or was it something else, bigger than us? This is the Italian with the Hawaiian, DB, and in today's video, we're gonna dip our toes in the world of kei cars. After the end of World War II, Japan was economically ruined, much like yours truly, which meant that the Japanese people needed cheap and reliable means of transportation. On top of that, roads were very narrow, and few could afford full-sized cars, let alone gas guzzlers from the US or from war-torn Europe. No, what was needed was the absolute most bare-bones and effective way of transportation, and the Japanese government responded by creating a brand new class of vehicles. The name? Kei-dosha, written like this, which literally meant light automobile. I know I've butchered the pronunciation, my boss, so just bear with me. The Kei-dosha had very specific rules, which were 150cc for 4-stroke engines or 100cc for 2 strokes, and limited to 9.8 feet long, 4.2 feet wide, and 6.5 feet tall, the latter also being the only rule that was never changed. It made perfect sense, and it was a win-win for everyone involved because they were easy to build, owning them was cheap, lower taxes, cheap insurance and reliability, which is neither Dorito if you ask me. Even with all these benefits, it took some time for kei cars to take off. But everything changed in 1955 when engine displacement was upgraded to a whopping 360cc. Not much by today's standards, or even those standards to be fair, but that was the secret sauce. That was the spark needed to jumpstart the market. So, what did car manufacturers cook for the Japanese population? Well, the Mazda R360, Honda N360, Subaru 360, a lot of 360, huh? And the Suzuki Suzulite, which is a killer name, and just look at it. Look at all of them. They were weird and quirky as hell. Also, the Suzulite was the first majorly successful kei car, dominating its competitors. So, the growth was there. Finally, a machine that was faster than a light scooter and with a real roof overhead. Though that's pretty much where all the comfort ends. It will take a long time for these cars to reach more acceptable driving comfort, of which Honda would have been the tip of the spear. If the Suzuki Suzulite was the Model T of kei cars, the Honda N360 was the Beetle. Simple, durable, yet charming. Took what was a challenge, sprout out of necessity, and turned it into a sensible choice. Just FYI, the car that would replace the N360 will be the Honda Civic. Ever heard of it? Especially with a VTEC in the middle of the night?
конечно, они у вас есть.
By the 1960s, kei cars became a segment of their own, exploding in popularity. And small cars were also all the rage in the old world, with small, highly efficient vehicles that will become synonym with reconstructions and economic boom, such as the Austin Mini, the Citroën 2CV and the Fiat 500, which has such a long story deserves its own video. Let me know down in the comments if you want to see it. Different story for the US car market. Big cars and big engines for big roads and a small gas price. So kei cars with their small size and fuel efficient engines couldn't possibly have a chance in that market. Even with all of this, kei cars were still struggling in their own markets. The bumping power and the upgrade in the quality of life injected by manufacturers was nice, but they were still lacking when it came to safety and power. After a lot of whining, the Japanese government threw car companies a juicy bone to chew on, one that will last all the way to the 90s, a nice pump in engine spec to 550cc, which gave more than enough room for engineers to have fun with.
Okay, it's worth it.
This pumping spec, combined with a little event known as the oil crisis, helped kei cars to go into the US as a sensible choice. Of course, they had to increase their engine spec even more to adapt to big US roads, and that's where the compact class entered the scene, with Honda, again, getting one of the biggest share of this newfound market with the Civic, remember? Europe was also pulling out banger after banger, Golf Mark 1 and Renault 5 just to name a few, but the export floodgates were open for Japan. Thing is, regular passenger kei cars weren't the main dish here, oh no. Kei trucks, with their utility, small price, dimensions and reliability, were the cake everyone wanted a slice of. Europe and especially South America, they all chimed in for the kei truck party. And you can find some late 80s, early 90s still roaming around, which is another sign of their reliability. Speaking of the 80s and early 90s, this was an insane period for kei cars. With the economic boom that Japan was going through and the advancement in technology, this little utilitarian bare-bones machine became a symbol of prosperity for even the most exigent driver. Electronic windows, all-wheel drive, turbos, AC, no compromises were made. And it shows because this is the moment in time where kei cars absolutely peaked. The Suzuki Alto, which has been dominating the passenger sales chart, was offered with a body kit, turbo and all-wheel drive, reaching the, at the time, limit of 47 kW displacement. The Suzuki Jimny, also known as the Samurai, which started a heritage of small, extremely capable off-road vehicles, and most importantly, one of the wildest looking, most driver-oriented little monster available for purchase, the AutoZan AZ1. Japan was going through a period of insane wealth and innovation. Animes like Akira, Lupin and Dragon Ball were broadcasted all over the world. The Walkman became a staple on our parents' waists, or yours even. Digital watches, televisions, robotics. Felt like Japan could have conquered the world. Of the top 50 companies in the world, 32 were Japanese. But then, this whole economic boom stopped and, like every economic bubble that gets bigger and bigger, it popped. The subsequent period, known as the Lost Decade, put a stop to the immense growth of Japan, which had an impact on beloved kei cars as well. Well, hold on, I hear you say. If Japan was in a difficult economical point in time, shouldn't kei cars, cheap and affordable cars, be safe from all this? Well, it's more complicated than that, but we'll get there.
Take a look at this! Jesus Christ, that right there is the mail. Now let's talk about the mail. Can we talk about the mail, please, Mac? I'm dying to talk about...
In 1991, the unreal economic boom that took Japan to the top of the world suddenly came to a screeching halt. The asset bubble burst. Real estate and stock markets crashed almost overnight. People lost jobs, companies folded, and consumer confidence collapsed. The country entered the lost decade. 10+ years of economic stagnation, deflation, and cautious spending. The Japanese car industry, thriving during the 80s, suddenly had to deal with a free-falling demand, aging population, tighter budgets, rising taxes and stricter regulations. Kei cars in particular became incredibly competitive and over-engineered, which means that they became much more expensive, especially now that the engine size reached 660cc. When the economy crashed, it stopped making sense. People still wanted cheap, efficient cars, but they didn't want to pay a premium for miniature performance toys. So there was a split in the kei car sector. On one side, you have the bare-bones utilitarian kei cars for small businesses, rural delivery and city commuting, like the Suzuki Alto or the Daihatsu Mira. On the other one, there were character-driven, nostalgic or lifestyle kei cars, like the Honda Beat, Suzuki Cappuccino or Subaru Vivio RXR, which leaned into quirkiness instead of utility. But the sportiness side of kei cars didn't last very long. Sales were poor, and with the economy that kept tanking, no one wanted to risk building tiny convertibles anymore. This period also saw an immense migration of the Japanese population from the rural areas to big cities like Osaka or Tokyo, which created an incredible paradox. Parking within the cities was expensive, and the public transport system was so well developed that buying a car seemed redundant, and, at the same time, the aging population in the rural areas were buying kei cars out of necessity, and kept them for longer. So, in Japan, kei cars became a symbol of survivalism, not an aspiration or a quirky lifestyle. In the rest of the world, things weren't going too hot for this market. The US kept making their cars bigger and bigger. SUV, trucks, sedans, it didn't matter. And in Europe, small hatchbacks, sedans and station wagons were all the rage. Some kei cars still managed to get some sales, but it was nothing compared to the European domestic market. Another big nail in the European coffin, which was about to be hammered down from Mercedes, was the birth of the smart car, which is an acronym for Swatch Mercedes Art, for those who didn't know. Yeah, Swatch. The watch company. These guys. Ironically, this is also the time when the public came in contact with the kei cars concept, through the internet, magazines, the growing import scene and video games, just like Gran Turismo 2. In 1998 though, new safety standards came in. Kei cars had to meet crash regulations and emissions limits like larger vehicles, which drove up production costs again. Around the same time, tax advantages were reduced, taking away their key selling point. This was the beginning of a kei plateau. Fewer new models, more recycled design and less innovation. Kei cars were still everywhere, but the excitement was gone. In the end, became a closed ecosystem, from Japan and for Japan only. So that's it, right? That's the end of kei cars, not with a bang but with a whimper? On the contrary, this will be the start of a comeback for kei cars. And who doesn't like a comeback story? The early 2000s didn't see any major changes for the kei car scene. Japan was still crawling out of the economic fallout of their bubble, and Japanese buyers were focusing their attention on practicality first, then everything else. Cities were booming with people and parking was limited, so public transport was still the best way to commute around big cities such as Tokyo. But if you absolutely needed a car, there was still no better choice than a kei car. It became the perfect urban organism, cheap to buy, easy to park and low maintenance, exactly what started it off way back when. This was also the point where sales overseas basically stopped. The US market was still unreachable with their big car mentality, and the small affordable cars of the EU, like the Mini Cooper, the Smart 42 and the Fiat Panda, kicked the kei cars out of the scene. I'm still mad about it. And if you ever did your driving license test in a 2008 Fiat Panda infected wound color, you know what I'm talking about. It wasn't a complete loss though. By only focusing their efforts on the Japanese market, it was time for kei cars to get into their kawaii era. It's the 2010s, and kei cars acquired a new identity once more. Perfect utilitarianism is gone. Now it was time to add a little bit of wasabi in this dry recipe. This is the period where we will start to see some of the most intriguing kei cars. The Honda N1 and S660, the Daihatsu Kei-pen, Suzuki Hustler, just to name a few. Whether you were a young kid in a big city looking for something more fun than just a small box to roam around, or an older kid who just needed a no-nonsense mean of transportation, there was a kei car waiting just for you. It was also during this time that the first Kei-V started to show up, like the not-so-great Mitsubishi IMEEV. Mitsubishi IMEEV. Mitsubishi IMIEV.
Mitsubishi IMIEV.
Mouthful. A lot of problems plagued this little egg-shaped machine, range most importantly, but the technology still wasn't there. It was the first mass-produced EV and sold more than 10,000 units. And it also managed to reach the EU in a joint venture with Peugeot and Citroën, so it got a story to tell and something to show for at least. So, during the 2010s, The Kei car scene went through a proper second golden age. It was a slingshot that catapulted the industry into the 2020s without any major hiccup. And with time, they started to get even more and more desirable from every side of the globe, for their reliability, contained cost and quirkiness, especially since the world started to slow descent into the horror, the unspeakable, the crossover SUV world. Adding into the fact that importing one of these little things into any country is such a financial and logistic effort that it can be seen as a flex at this point, and you have the perfect recipe for a vehicle that you keep with a pin in your head, wondering if and when they will finally be in your market, only to be disappointed time and time again. While we're at it, please like and subscribe, share the video, let me know what can be improved and what would you like me to talk about in the next one. Thank you. Moving on. So, the 2020s, wild years, huh? Ever since the funky flu, time started to act like Interstellar. The car scene also went in a completely different direction, one that doesn't seem to be completely clean yet. Green. Nah, not the cool British green, no, just more eco-friendly. EV is the big buzzword of recent times, and not just that. Recycled materials, mobility, AI, self-driving, battery swapping. It's Blade Runner without flying Peugeots and the big purple lady that makes Ryan Gosling sad. Both Europe, the US and now China are elbow deep in the electrification of vehicles. So, what about the Japanese side of things? Well, manufacturers didn't just stand there and watch. Now that the tech finally allowed it, Kei cars started to come out of the factory with very intriguing range numbers on them. 110 miles of range, more than enough for every type of urban adventure you could have, and priced affordably with subsides. Some notable models are the Nissan Sakura and Mitsubishi EK-X-EV, Japan's first mainstream Kei electric cars, Honda N360 EV, targeting businesses and delivery drivers, continuing the Kei workhorse legacy, and the N1 EV, an EV version of the N1 we discussed before. And Daihatsu and Suzuki are also adding in some existing models to the EV market, with even more projects in the work. Speaking of urban, a lot of cities, especially in Europe, now starts to look a lot like that post-war Japan, overcrowded, without parking spots or limited traffic, and environment conscious. It's here that the Kei mentality sparked a new wave of microcars, though not directly Japanese. Vehicles like the Citroën Ami that you see everywhere in Europe, or the Fiat Topolino that you see nowhere in Europe, the Renault Twinsy and Dacia Hipster, a concept car at the time of recording, all microcars created to throw hands at bigger SUVs and scooters, promoting a different type of mobility, something integrated within the city itself. And this is just for Europe, don't even get me started on the Chinese side of things, especially since the Chinese car market is such a dangerous Pandora's box to open, especially because I know nothing about it. Yet. It's ironic, really. What started as a post-war necessity in Japan is now re-emerging as a 21st century necessity for the planet. So, as of right now, we have three worlds of Kei cars. The past, who gain a status of unachievable ingenuity thanks to YouTube videos, car meets and the import scene, especially in the US thanks to the 25 years import rule, with small, quirky machines like the Suzuki Cappuccino and the Atos Amaze 1, or Kei truck like the Honda Acti, Suzuki Every or Daihatsu Hijet, brought into the States to be lowered or turned into vans and off-road rigs. The algorithm seems to love Kei trucks related videos, and I'm sure that at least one video popped into your recommended. You can go and watch it after this one, don't worry about it. The present is stable and uninteresting, like Bob Parr's work in The Incredibles. Kei cars represent still 40% of all cars sold in Japan, especially outside of Tokyo. And the future? Oh, the future is gonna be a different beast. Hell, the next chapter might not even be called Kei cars. It will be urban microcars, AI-driven city shuttles, and personal EVs that serve the same function, mobility. Japan's Kei DNA, compact, efficient and friendly, is showing up in new forms around the world. We looked at kei cars with delighted interest, or scoffed at them without a second thought. Now, cities choke on their own traffic and EVs grow smaller and more efficient every year. Maybe kei cars weren't a compromise, maybe they were a prophecy. Whatever the future might hold, I'm happy I can get to look back at my mom's old car and realize how great things are sometimes hidden in plain sight. Hope you enjoyed this video. I had a blast putting it together, even though it took me forever. It's my first one, so any feedback is greatly appreciated. If you own or have any experience with kei cars, let me know in the comments below. I would love to read you. Well, that's all for now. This was the Italian with the Hawaiian, DB, and I wish you all good night.